Hello, Australia, and welcome to the BAP. My name is Franco, and joining me today, returning to the as per usual roster, is Jason. Not joining us for the as per usual roster, high-fiving Jason on the way out as Jason comes back in. Dino.
Can't seem to keep a consistent lineup these last couple of weeks.
Well, it is Father's Day today, so perhaps Dean enjoyed Father's Day a bit too much.
That's possibly right.
And if you're wondering what that is on feedback, that is us, not us repeating ourselves, but us doing our audio sampling testing to make
on
sure
the fly.
everything is coming through correctly. Jason, how did you celebrate Father's Day today?
We were going to be going for a trip up to Araluen, but it got cancelled last minute because my mother was a bit ill. So I'll be catching up and doing Dad's Day stuff tomorrow.
Oh, so you're postponing it for one day?
Postponing it, yeah.
No, okay. So Araluen's tomorrow. Right. So everything's tickety-boo as far as broadcasting is going. So I can now focus more onto what I'm saying rather than ranting dribble.
And what have we got big on the news for today? There's the finality.
Well, I'm going to have to be honest with you, Jason. I've consumed a fair bit of wine today, so my prep did not venture towards news items, but more on things that just interest me in general.
Which is how these things tend to go for us.
Pretty much the douchebag filter is well covered. Anything after the douchebag filter, we're going to be a bit
There may not be much.
So, we had the final episode of Game of Thrones. If you were going to sum up what you thought about Game of Thrones season finale in one sentence, how would you...
Oh, 1 cent.
A few words.
Underwhelming. I don't know. It's to be honest, I should have something more to say about it, but it was okay. It was a solid episode, but it didn't leave me. I tell you what, if I hadn't already invested, if there wasn't so much sunk effort into watching Game of Thrones, the last season, I would not be looking forward to it quite so much.
That is a very salient point, because I was going to sum it up with one word. I didn't even need a sentence. More than pleasant, comfortable. Yeah. And you're right. I can only say those words because I've invested a lot of time and energy into this series. And had I not, had all that investment, if I just came into this watching that finale, I would have gone, I don't get it, and it's underwhelming.
Oh yeah, coming in at this point, there'd be no... You couldn't come in at this point.
There's no hooks to get you in as a new viewer.
And I don't know, it just seems like the players, the main characters are just being forced into dialogues and certain situations that I don't know. I remember just having discussion amongst ourselves. There were a certain number of scenes that we could have fixed quite easily. And it just seems like there's silly mistakes being made, and I don't know why. I don't know why.
And that's a good point. I mean, as Dean has sort of laboured, that they seem to have lost their way without the books. But yeah, you'd imagine, besides the CGI that they throw a lot of money at, script writers, there must be a lot of money going to very talented people to write script. So where is it going wrong?
I don't know. They've got a whole bunch of characters that they obviously at some point thought that they were going to do things with. And then they just wrap up those storylines as quickly as possible. That's what happened with the people from Dawn, the matriarch from Highgarden. All fantastic characters. Can't afford to be dealing with them. And with one season left to go, we've got to just off them and get rid of them and wrap up those loose ends.
So I would rather them rushing to finish the storyline, rather go, we can't finish the story. Make the call. We can't finish the story. Why not get to a certain point and do it well, so that it could be picked up, in 10 years' time with new actors, fresh faces? Because obviously, I think Dean's mentioned this, the actors they have in place probably want to move on to other projects. They've dedicated 7 years of their life to this, and one could understand why they don't want to necessarily dedicate another 5 years to completing a whole story or the story arc. So why not say, why don't we just take it up to the wildlings are at, not the wildlings, sorry, the White Walkers are at the wall, and we're going to stop there. We're going to do it really well up to that point, and that's our end point.
Considering, I mean, having recently just rewatched the entire series, basically, it started with the White Walkers, right?
Yes.
And have it finish with the White Walkers just coming to the wall, and then it finish. Oh, I would feel completely fucking ripped off.
But don't you feel ripped off anyway that they're so clumsily tying off all these loose
Yeah,
ends?
yeah. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and watch that final season, and maybe they'll do it but I've got to admit there was a couple of good episodes in this season. Sorry,
I'd say there was one great episode,
but
and everything else was.
But there was some stuff that was just rushed and thrown in, and as yet I'm beginning to lose faith that there's going to be payoff for certain things that they've left in the storyline. Like they've just introduced certain elements and certain characters to have them just disappear with no payoff whatsoever.
Yes.
That I don't have much faith. I used to have great faith in the writers, D&D, whatever their names are, that they'd make the most use of the material they had. But as you said, as they run out of book, they seem to be struggling a bit, and just some weird sorts of things that, and I can't remember them offhand, but certain awkward moments within certain scenes that could have been fixed so easily, like. Bang, I think Jon Snow getting buried going under the lake and things like that, and then suddenly popping up out of the lake, and everyone's going, "Oh, how did that happen?" And
why didn't he just die?
And some of the teleporting that's going on, and just crazy stuff. It just seems like it's not entirely necessary.
All right, well, let's dive into episode 7, titled "The Dragon and the Wolf." We start at King's Landing, where all the major players, the King of the North, Mother of Dragons, and Queen Cersei meet at the Dragon Pit.
Yep.
So we have a bit of...
It's a big meeting. There's a lot of big players all in one place.
Well, before we even get there, we have the usual interesting banter between some of the lesser players. We have Bronn have his great line about telling Gendry, let's go to the pub. No, not Gendry, sorry. The other miner. Podrick, let's go to the pub while the fancy people talk.
Yep.
Which sent the internet on fire about the ongoing feud between the real-life actors that play Bronn and Cersei Lannister not liking each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, that's been going on for quite some time.
I know, I remember
saying they've got it written into their contract.
I saw a clickbait heading that had Lena Headey in the thumbnail, and it was like people who can't stand their co-actors. But Bronn and Cersei are so rarely in the same scene. How would they even develop?
Well, they're suggesting that it's been manufactured that way because in both their contracts they have it written in that they are not to be in the same room together. They apparently dated many years ago.
Oh, right.
And, the internet's speculating that's in their contracts and they can't stand each other. And I can see why they would suggest that, because there's some scenes where Cersei's revealing some of her machinations to Jaime, and it would make sense that Bronn would also be present for this because he's a trusted thing, but who knows?
Yeah.
Don't know. It did seem weird that Bronn left while every other side...
They made a point of saying, instead of just having them loiter in the background, they made a point of them leaving the scene, which was a little odd, yeah.
So yes, we have the main characters assembled, except for Daenerys, who arrives with great pantomime upon a dragon.
Of course, I always knew that was going to happen. There's no way she wasn't flying in on a dragon. So that was all pomposity and dick swinging. Yes, basically.
And Jon making a fool of himself as per usual, refusing to bend at the knee when he seems so willing to bend at the knee when he so chooses. But he's all about oaths, swearing of oaths. What would they mean if I didn't abide by them?
He's definitely the oath keeper.
Whilst everyone else was saying, shades of grey, buddy. So
yeah. And he's towing his adopted father's line.
Daenerys said shades of grey. Tyrion called, why didn't you do shades of grey, buddy? Couldn't do it.
But they brought out that bit of evidence from the Magnificent Seven's outing.
Yes.
Beyond the wall, the undead... the undead zombie, and of course, what's his name? Crasta, the
that's right. Her
Cersei's mad scientist. Yeah, he was pretty happy with the situation. Yeah. I think he's going, "Ooh, can't wait to check this out." And Cersei sort of hammed it up a little bit as being afraid, but as we suspected. And this is no spoiler if you've seen the episode, she's going to betray them, and she's got no interest in fighting the army of the North, the Night King's army, and she's going to betray them. So the whole fucking stupid foray north of the wall, where they gave the Night King a nice dragon, would seem to be a complete waste of time.
A fucking
as anyone could have, as they all should have known themselves.
So we're sort of jumping ahead. A bit before that, though, when everyone was meeting each other in the Dragon Pit. The Hound saw his zombie brother, Clegane. And he went up to him and they had, bit of banter. Well, not from Clegane, but
It was very one-sided banter.
there was one comment which I don't know the answer to. Maybe you do. When he says to his brother, "You know who's coming for you. You've always known." Who was he referring to?
Well, I would assume it's him.
I was hoping that Dean would be here to give me an answer on that one. But
Oh, right. I just assumed it was the Hound who's coming for
well,
him.
why would he speak so cryptic? If he's dead, he could say, "I'm coming for you," just in case you were wondering. Why would he phrase it in roundabout ways?
Yeah, that's fair enough. Oh, but the whole Clegane Bowl that they've been talking about, and it's been mentioned a fair bit. It's
on the internet,
ongoing myth.
there's a lot of expectation
Yeah.
from the nerdettes
But
that they will be having a battle.
Clegane ain't Clegane anymore.
No, he's zombie Clegane.
He's a zombie, and who cares who
And
kills the zombie? So
the Hound did try and see if his brother was still in there.
it did seem like there was some. It doesn't seem like he's completely mindless, right? The Mountain. He's not completely mindless. He takes orders. He knows. He seems to understand who and where people are and stuff like that. So he's obviously not completely mindless, but he's not the Mountain of old.
No.
So I don't know. Hound versus Mountain is not really
I
something.
thought
that
the
we're
Hound would
about.
take great pleasure to see his brother in his own little, entombed in his own little mindless world. Sort of some poetic justice there.
But yeah, I said other people are waiting for Game Bowl. I'm not that interested in it.
No, I think, yeah.
Besides,
What's the point? He's a zombie.
I think
What
zombie-
satisfaction do you get from killing a zombie?
I'm not even sure he could kill that zombie.
No.
It's if anything, it's Mountain even more powerful. Anyway.
So with that little side bit, we have Cersei pretty much trying to come to grips with the little present she got, but because Jon wouldn't bend the knee, she chucks a little hissy fit and walks out. Then we have Tyrion being selfless in declaring that he will go speak to his sister,
yeah,
even though it could mean certain death, being that she hates his guts.
but they had a conversation, and
Yeah, I thought that was a piss poor scene.
I-
A lot of
yeah.
it, in every other aspect of the whole series, she's been willing to pretty much, neck him.
yeah, and then
And
all
when
of
she
a
has the
sudden,
perfect opportunity,
well, maybe she's playing the long game, but I just don't. If she was playing, if she was half as smart as she thinks she is, and she was playing the long game, she'd understand what the threat from the north was a bit better. Than now, she's simply just going to backstab people.
Yeah.
That this golden company that everyone's been mentioning
lame.
is going to come up from Essos and obviously appear at some pivotal moment, like a la Battle of the Bastards or something like that, where someone is lost or someone has won, and the Golden Company will come in and reverse the situation.
It is getting a bit tiresome to have all these magical armies just
Just
magical
rock up.
I think we've got the Dothraki, we've got the Unsullied. Now we have the Golden
the Knights
Company.
of the Vale turned up.
Yeah.
The Gold Company, it's pretty point. And in fact, at one point, even the Wildlings turned up at Battle of Castle Black and things like that. So
Why can't we just have average regular mercenaries come up? And no special abilities. Just get paid for doing shit.
well, that's Bronn. He's the sellsword.
So-
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, the final episode of the season is normally just a build up. But of course, what did it go to after that? It was,
well, the final part of King's Landing is naive Jamie is made aware that directly from Cersei that she's going to betray everyone, even though he made an oath. Jon and Jamie love oaths, and he's
so-
going to keep his oath.
So he's gone off by himself or with an army? I can't.
At this stage, by himself.
Yeah.
He's going to keep his oath to join the people of the North and crew Daenerys to fight off the White Walkers.
He's a bit pointless with one
Then
hand.
the
though.
final scene we see is him on his little horse, because Cersei's threatened to kill him, but she didn't. Once again, I would have thought she would just killed him, to be more in line with her character.
Well, maybe not him. She
She's
seems to be
very
willing
much
kill
to
him.
and fro about how she feels about her siblings.
That's right. Family's everything to her. However, there is no family
Yeah.
left. So you think the final ones would be worth a little bit more. But
So we see the final scene is Jamie on a horse by himself with King's Landing in yonder, looking up at the sky. Hey, winter's come.
it's starting to snow.
Yes,
Yeah.
even in King's Landing. So from there we move to Dragonstone, where there's great discussion about Daenerys' travel arrangements to the north, whether she should go via Dragon or via galley.
And Jon Snow, because apparently his cave trick hasn't worked recently, decided to go by boat. He reckons he's got some time alone with Daenerys on the boat.
So Daenerys makes the call that she's going to go via ship, not to scare the people of North, because she's not there to conquer them.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. That was a little interesting little detail that decided.
Then we have...
all stuff that could have been decided off screen and they could just go ahead and do, you know what I mean?
Didn't really need to know. Who cares?
Except that it gave Jon and Dany time to get wiki.
Well, even before that, we have Jon and Theon's D&M on the steps of the dragon. What's the throne called? Dragon Stone or something? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Dragon Throne? I don't know.
Stone Throne.
So Theon approaches Jon to sort of... bare his soul about how he regrets what he's done in the past, which all leads up into the end about Jon saying, "Go and fucking save your sister. You've got my blessing."
yeah, go do it. Do something good.
So then we're on the beach of Dragonstone, where Theon confronts his very small company of all of 12 men, claiming they're going to take on Euron. Amazing. And the main ringleader of the Greyjoys there says, "Fuck you, Theon," and they have a battle. Little fighty poo.
Which Theon was losing.
And to be honest, I've been waiting for Theon to find his fighting spirit because, right at the beginning, he's portrayed as quite the fighter.
Yeah.
Gigolo fighter.
He certainly said that.
He had some form with the sword, we were led to believe.
Yeah. And arrow, actually. Yeah, he was pretty good archer.
Since his foray into being Rick, he lost all that ability. But you always thought it was deep down that it's got to be there. And when's the redemption? Where's he going to come out and be a bit of a fighter again? And wasn't quite happy with the way he rediscovered his ability to fight. Was the over dramatization and portrayal of him being kneed in the nuts 3 times. It was like the producers, the director, were literally grabbing me by the eyeballs and directing me, pulling me towards his groin. Go, look at this. This is how he regains his ability to fight. See, knee, groin, no balls. Are you reading this? Do I need to teleport this into your brain anymore?
It doesn't hurt him anymore.
Yes. Loud and clear. I mean, they really should have had the rest of those Greyjoy mercenaries holding up signs. Knee, ball, makes him fighter.
I think the third one was gratuitous. You know what I mean? It was like whack.
Exactly.
Whack. It was like, really? Dude? I mean, you might have thought you just missed him first time.
It just didn't even make any sense.
I'm pretty sure it still hurt like fuck. Because, I don't know. Anyway.
I probably need some sort
of that turned the fight.
Just to explain it to me.
Theon pounded him into submission. Pounded him into submission. The rest of the team all went, "Hey, we go with the strong guy," even though he's had a terrible run of fucking luck.
Well, I don't know if that was so much about the strong guy, but it was more on. Now we're on board with the message of save
Yara.
Yara.
Yeah. So
how are they going to do this with a band of 12 people? I don't know.
Well, Yara did it with a small band initially to go in and go into Ramsay, get him from Ramsay when they're Greyjoys. They're into sneaky shit.
But
remember they took Winterfell with what, 80 people?
Oh, that's true. But I mean, I was pleased with that, even though that little bit of cheese annoyed me. Overall, I was happy with something's happening with Theon side story.
Something else,
which they'll probably won't do anything with in the new season.
They've got what, 3 feature-length films to finish it up in.
Then from there, we went to Winterfell, where we bore witness to Littlefinger's demise.
That's actually the best part of it. Okay. The best part, although much like the death of Joffrey, I felt like I wanted to linger on Littlefinger's death a little better.
I don't know. They seem to labour through the whole series of carrying the boring character of Littlefinger, who should have died pretty much episode 1. That could have been wrapped up very quickly. It was such a small side part.
He was allowed to get away with things that at some point people would just turn around and said, "Oh, sorry, buddy, you are too dangerous to have around." Slit.
Yes.
And that was that. And they finally did it. But, they did it in overly dramatic fashion. They made it... They led the audience to believe that Sansa and Arya were about to have it out. She was about to get... Sansa was about to execute Arya, her own sister. And a bit of misdirection, and it turned out it was Lord Baelor that they were.
It was no Red Wedding drama or build-up, but...
No. But it was kind of fitting in that it was in a similar sort of throne room
didn't need
setting where Ned Stark got betrayed by...
Yeah, but didn't need 4 episodes to weave that whole
Yeah, you're right. They did.
thread
They
through.
extended it for a long time, and it turned out, once again, that it turned out there was no explanation between the sisters as to any coming to an to a meeting of minds. It was just totally led you to believe that Sansa was gonna off Arya, and just in the last minute, Sansa turned out was, as we've all been surmising lately, is smarter than she's been letting on for a long time, sort of thing. Which is fair. I actually think her story arc's been pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
She said she's learnt a lot of things as she went along. So,
we also found that Samwell Tarly arrives at Winterfell via magic teleporter.
yeah.
Still unaware that his brother and father have been made crispy.
See, that's the other thing, is they can travel the length of these continents, where I gather they're picking up news wherever they stop at an inn or something like that. And the death of the Tarleys, one of the major families, probably would have been announced at some point, right?
Yes. Would have thought so.
Yeah.
But apparently not.
They have teleportation. They have fast flying ravens that can deliver news all the time, and yet no one seems to know what the fuck's going on.
Samwell and Bram have a parley where it's finally revealed Jon Snow's no bastard. He's not a Snow. He's not a Sand. He's a Targaryen.
He is, in fact, the one
A
and true
legitimate
king,
Targaryen.
the legitimate king of Westeros, even more than Dany.
Even more than that.
And this is the thing that they're sort of hinting at is, well, I mean, if Dany and Jon are hooking up anyway, and they go, well, let's just rule together,
Yeah.
since, hey, you seem to be into it, and apparently I'm the dude that's meant to be there. And let's face it, Jon's not really that fussed about leading, being a king so
No.
much. Danny can do all that shit. He can just run off on stupid missions.
You know, making oaths and
Making oaths and being good at getting other
bending his knee when it's needed to.
being good at getting other people killed on stupid missions and stuff like that. Meanwhile, Danny can be can do the power moves and do all the shit.
Oh, I mean, they could subcontract it out to Tyrion. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So who knows how that's going to end? Because I mean, Danny and Jon had that little moment on the ship.
Yes,
And,
that was the next scene we went to, is the Narrow Sea, when Jon and Daenerys had a bit of sexual healing
Yep.
with Tyrion watching.
Tyrion not watching, but he did notice that he'd been obviously loitering in the hallway a little bit.
And the point of that was nothing in particular.
Someone, whether he's just. Someone said, "Oh, it's because he's in love with Danny." I don't think it's that.
no.
I don't think he's that fussed about that.
I think he's had enough. If they're accurate to the portrayal of Tyrion, he's had enough women in his time not to get.
He's maybe just quite. He's maybe quite interested in knowing that, hey, those two are hooking up. That's interesting.
Well, his concern has always been
sense.
the heir.
Oh, that's true.
And he's always been worried about how the revolution, the Targaryen revolution, is going to carry on.
And I guess a child born of Jon and Danny would have be as legitimate as they could possibly get one, really.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, Tyrion doesn't know that Jon Snow's not a Snow.
Not a
So technically,
Stark,
he's not of royal blood. So perhaps that could cause him concern about the mores of the time.
Well, that's true. But then again, I guess either way, they're looking at a union between Danny and Starks as something that would strengthen both houses. So.
But he's not a Stark.
Tyrion doesn't know that, though. Like,
He does know that. He's a Snow.
He's a Snow, but he's also King of the North at the moment.
How legitimate is that?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, at the moment...
we would have to consult
at the moment, it's
a
legitimate.
scholar in Westeros law.
At the moment, it's legitimate in that power is what has power. And at the moment...
Power begets power?
You could say Sansa's King of the North, because she's the one that would command the troops at the moment. So,
well, I prefer a non-gender loaded term, but if you want to go with king, we'll go with that.
Leader of the North. We'll redefine it.
And then, for me, the most lame part of the episode, which is where they obviously spent most of the money, was the breaking of the wall for the most ridiculous reason. So basically, I think we discussed this on email, the whole thrust of the White Walkers to be able to invade the north was via dragon.
And they had to lure a dragon north of the wall to get, which...
that was their only way to get north, was to have a dragon to burn down the wall.
And that really doesn't sit well with me.
No.
Like, is that what their plan was?
It should have been something else. They were heading towards the wall. They must have had some other plan.
Yeah.
They had no knowledge a dragon would rock up.
I mean, someone could say that maybe the Night King has some far-seeing powers as well, like Bran and stuff like that, because maybe one theory is that he is Bran from a previous life, that all the Brans are the same Brans throughout. Anyway, putting that aside, it really does feel unsatisfying that it was a tool provided by Jon's misadventure into the north that let the Night King breach the wall. Which, to think that he was going all this way without any alternative plan, unless it was something to do with those chains that they had for that dragon. Maybe.
Well, they have established that it is possible to climb the wall.
But there was the other talk was the undead not being able to go south of the wall, right?
Because there was a magical aspect to the wall.
It's been proven wrong twice so far.
Yes.
So once, most recently, was when they brought that undead down to show Cersei, and also the time they brought that body south of the wall and it attacked them in Castle Black.
Yes.
So I don't know. I don't know where this coming. But anyway, the dragon brought down the wall. Maybe it just saved them having to assault the wall. And maybe that's what they were going to do. I don't know. Because I imagine an undead army scaling a wall would be even harder to stop than the wildling army when they tried to scale the wall.
So all they would have to do was get enough to scale to take over the wall to open the door.
Open the door or just start tearing it down to some point.
Considering they've been whinging for so long about how low the numbers of the watches.
Yeah. And the poor wildlings got the worst part of it too. They've been getting run out of the north. Then they get given the most hazardous duty on the East Watch by the sea, which gets blown away by a dragon. Can't be too many of those wildlings left. And
that pretty much brought us to the end of season 7.
Yeah. Predictions for season. It's supposed to be season 7.B or something, but the next season. I even hazard to guess to make predictions anymore because it's just
my care factor's not up there.
Nah. This season's sort of killing it for me a little bit.
Underwhelmed.
I'll watch it. Yeah. I'll watch it because I'm invested, but that's about it.
I watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2 last night, which I'm going to dub Family Edition. It's all about families.
It was.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have. It's very much about father abandonment issues.
Yes. sibling rivalry.
It wasn't bad, but it didn't have the charm of the first movie.
No, and I saw a lot of people hyping about how good it was, and I went, it's okay. It's entertaining.
It's okay, yeah.
It's not really breaking new ground. It was a very niche angle they went on. I thought, okay. Yeah.
My partner can be very hard to please with some of these movies, and she loved Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, it was one of those things when we watched it, just happened to be on TV, and she went, oh, wow, this is really good. Was really enjoying it. So we went to the movies to see Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and completely underwhelmed. It was just, I wasn't, the whole exploration of Peter Quill's father origin story just was like, I mean, there was a lot of fun bits in it, but
there was a lot of humor which I enjoyed. The Drax comic relief was great, good fun.
There was a lot of good stuff. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I don't know many of the details, but I just remember thinking,
the Yondu redemption story was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I didn't mind that actually. That was actually quite well done in the end. Way better than the Kurt Russell ego plotline, which I went like, this is really Mork and Mindy-ish type weird stuff. I'm like, was this Tron weird?
Yeah, it's the was it Deus Ex Machina that was working there was just a little bit too contrived, but
the Yondu plotline I thought was pretty cool.
It was funny. The characters individually were funny.
Yeah.
Whether there's a number 3, it's entirely possible there'll be a number 3.
I think there'll be number 3, definitely. I mean,
I think they made enough money out of it.
I think so, and it's a broad universe they can explore, and hopefully they'll learn their lesson that they need to have a broader story than that sort of niche.
So what TV series should we be watching next as all three of us can comment on? Any listeners, of which we have at least 2 or 3 during the week, could possibly email us and let us
we
know.
need a recommendation. I think we did get someone sent something in.
The Americans is one that Dean's way ahead on that you and I could catch up on.
Yes.
And we'd enjoy it, I reckon. I've seen a fair few of them, but I'm only 2 seasons in myself. And I suspect you would enjoy that. I don't know what else is coming up. I think I did name... There's the new Seth MacFarlane.
Yes, the Orwellian?
The Orwell?
Orwell, yes.
Which, to be honest, I've seen the shorts to it, and I'm going... It could become very... I think that could become very tiresome very quick.
It might not be show-worthy discussion.
Yeah, it might not...
Light entertainment.
Might not have much longevity to it.
The new Star Trek, though, one looks good.
That could be worth tracking. I might have to find other ways to get hold of these because the Australian government and their seems to have cracked down on the most streaming sites that are around at the moment. So until the next batch of streaming sites come through,
so they've sort of blocked them.
And here's another recommendation. I started listening to a new podcast called Struggle Session.
Okay.
Today over the week. And there was a full half-hour section of these guys just discussing their various ways of pirating certain... Because they're very much anarchist,
them or people they know?
No, them themselves.
They talk about putting on an eye patch, peg leg, and parrot on the shoulder.
That's right. Talking about series that they're going to watch, and clearly these guys are mostly... Well, they're probably a little more Antifa than your Chapo Trap House and that kind of thing. And they got absolutely nothing against piracy, and they don't mind talking about it on air.
Actually, speaking of Antifa, and this is coming out left field, we talk about Joe Rogan quite a bit and how he can sort of be hot and cold sometimes on topics, but he had W. Kamar Bell on, and it was quite interesting listening to
we'll have to listen to that one, because I don't mind W. Kamar Bell. He's got his own podcast, which I listen to. So, and
it's sort of interesting to hear Joe Rogan... keeping in measure or keeping in check is sort of more libertarian, centerish.
Really, I mean, I'll definitely listen to it. But Joe Rogan was he devil's advocating like he usually does, or
I think
because I mean we can dive into this in a minute, because I thought we might discuss our first playthrough of TI4.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll come back to Joe Rogan because
I had a little bit on the Antifa stuff which I wanted to talk about.
Yep. So yes. Twilight Imperium, for those that don't know, is an epic space battle for control of the galaxy.
It's an obsession amongst the small group of people that we know. At nearly every public holiday, we all get together, and usually in a group of about 5 or 6 people, to play this epic game which lasts well into the night, when everyone's tempers are getting frayed, people have been drinking alcohol, and they're just ready to go home and pack up.
So we've been playing the 3rd edition of this game for the past 4 years, and... we caught wind that the 4th edition was being released, and that a pre-release copies were being sold at Gen Con in Texas, was it, I think?
I'm not sure where it was.
Somewhere in the America, which is...
But the Gen Con convention, which is the board game convention.
Which typically game manufacturers will try and do pre-releases at.
And our obsessive-compulsive friend Dean simply had to have... a brand new copy of this.
Well, not only did
he have to have one copy, but he bid on 2 and won both of them. So spent a lot of money getting it here. And he and I played it through with my son and my son's friends. So we had a 4-player game that we only went for about 4 turns, because we didn't start till late, till like 7 o'clock at night, and we played through till just about midnight. And first impressions are it moves a little bit quicker in the first few turns.
Yep.
Because there's no politics. So this game is a 4X game, so you each take on the role of a galactic civilization, and you're all looking to expand your civilization, and there's certain objectives you want to achieve, taking certain planets, defeating certain enemies to earn victory points to win, and that's the basis of the game. But the first few turns, definitely as a comparison to TI3, flow a bit better.
Yeah.
You still have the same problem of the Franco types and your Dave Crab types who will sit there and stare at a turn for a long time. There's nothing we can do about that, but I will say there's certain other elements of the game that are streamlined that work really interestingly.
So do you start with primary and secondary objectives?
You do start with one secret objective.
Yes.
One secret objective. And the good thing is you can get more secret objectives. So if you get one that's crap, and the ones I saw seem to be a little more achievable as well. But if you get one that, because half the problem was in the original TI3 version, everyone get one secret objective. And some of those you look at and go, I'm never going to get that secret objective. This one, you can take the politics card and get another secret objective card.
Oh, that's pretty handy.
And you can use that to draw, so you can actually draw out a few if you want.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Probably, I'm just trying to think of some of the biggest changes. You know, the agenda cards. So it's played with strategy cards. At the beginning of every game turn, each player chooses one or sometimes two, depending on the number of the players, strategy cards, and that sort of defines what their main action is going to be through that turn. So you got a warfare card, a political card, a construction card, diplomacy card. I'm trying to rattle off the other ones. There's 8 of them total, and technology. And the interesting thing was, there's no production card anymore.
Okay. So you can do production whenever you want.
So you could always do production whenever you want, but if waiting for the production card to play, let you build in a system without activating it. But now, if you want to build in a system, you got to activate it. Except the secondary on the warfare card lets you build in a system.
No, that makes sense.
So that's the secondary on the warfare card. The warfare card no longer is now even sneakier than anything. Than before. The warfare card, instead of you put the warfare token down on a given area and then you stick it on the next turn, you stick it on the destination and you move everything there. Second, the warfare card simply lets you pick up a command counter from an already activated system, then reorganize all your command counters as you see fit. Maybe make your fleet limit bigger or something, and then place another counter down and just have everything merge into it.
Oh, I like that.
It's interesting, and I used that one on Dean fairly early, and it worked really well.
That's great, because I always felt there's a limitation with the warfare card that it telegraphed what you're up to.
No, this is interesting because he was looking at it. He goes, "Why you activated that system? You can't move into here now." And I'm like, I'm just playing, I was playing it close to my chest for the first game because none of us really knew how these things were going to play out. And then of course let me pick that up, and he went, "Oh, I can see what you can do now," and then bang, it was interesting.
That is awesome. It's basically everyone's going to be on highlight, whereas before it was obvious to see what someone's play was going to be.
And so your strategy tokens, you've got tactical tokens for moving your fleet around, your fleet size token, and your strategy tokens. You are much more conscious of making sure you've got strategy tokens available to use on certain things you need, and that economy is a lot tighter than it used to be in TI3.
Yeah.
So you will get caught out without having enough strategy tokens quite often.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that I feel is one of the biggest changes, especially in the early part of the game. One of the strategy cards is construction. Now, the construction card, the primary ability lets you build a space dock and a PDS on a planet that you control. Yeah. That's the only way you can build space dock and PDS now.
Oh, okay.
So you can't just decide to build one there. And the secondary also lets you spend a token to build a strategy or a PDS.
Seems quite limiting.
It is very limiting. So when we were playing out our game, you could see that someone was making a rush for Mercatile Rex. He got a planet close to it. I had the construction card. If I'd played it at a certain time, that would have let him build space dock.
So anyone can build if that card gets played.
If that card gets played.
If it doesn't get played, no one's building space.
But it also made me conscious of when I played that card, so that it would avoid letting him do that.
Yeah.
And it very much controls the early flow of the game.
Yeah.
Things like that, which I think balance things out a lot more. It's really interesting.
I don't know. I think maybe in an email thread I saw that to take control of Mercantile Works takes a bit more effort. You got to burn 3 strategy tokens.
So it costs you 6 influence to take the planet, land troops on it, and for that you get 1 victory point given to you so that you.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
But then the other thing is you've got the politics card, and once Mercantile Rex has been taken, then at the end of every turn you have the agenda phase, which is where you play politics cards and things like that. But the politics strategy card, if you control Mercantile Rex, you get 1 victory point So if you control Mercantile Rex, suddenly you just want to grab not politics, the Imperium card.
Yeah.
So you go on and grab the Imperium card because that lets you just tick away
Oh, that's pretty cool.
getting things. But what I did notice, we didn't get to play it out properly. I think you're going to have a lot more seesaw over control of Mercantile
Yes.
Rex. People are not going to let you sit on Mercantile Rex.
So is there a limit on how many victory points you can claim per round?
You can claim at the end of during the status phase at the end, you can claim one public and one secret. So if you can claim your secret and you've got a public, you can also claim. You can claim two.
That's pretty cool.
And if you play the political card, you play the Imperium card, you can claim one public then as well. So you can claim, once again, you can claim two in a turn if you pick the right card and you want to do that.
So what's this Imperium card?
It's like bureaucracy, only slightly different. And so you get 2 rows of. I don't think there's any game over agenda card that you pull out. You know, it's just accruing victory points, and you get 2 rows of layer 1, and you just flip one every turn, no matter what. And there's a layer 2, which are all worth 2 points each, and they come later in the game, and you flip them. So there's plenty of time to catch up. I like the idea of it. I think it moved a lot better.
Were people accruing victory points a lot quicker?
Well, we only played 4 turns, and it was Connor who wasn't terribly interested in the game and was very new. It's just difficult for someone who wasn't quite into it.
Yep.
And Rob, who was doing pretty well and figuring it out as well, but we only played like those 3-4 turns, and we didn't really get to see. But yeah, we were accruing points. You could see how you could accrue them, and you could also see, you know, if you decide not to accrue victory points, someone will get a lead, and once someone gets a lead, that, you know, as with other games of TI3, if they get too much of a lead, it's hard to catch up.
So are there any new races?
No, all the old races tweaked a bit.
Yeah.
So balanced a little bit. Trade works differently. So I thought that was going to be a bit of a nerf on Hakan, but I don't think it is, because trade means it's this whole idea of having neighbours.
Yes.
So you have to have a common border with someone, like ships or controlled planets in adjacent areas, to be able to trade with them.
Okay. Do you have to have a trade contract with them?
No.
Okay.
No. There's certain points at which you can trade when the trade card gets played, or during the the agenda phase.
Well, what are the trade values then if you're not establishing contracts?
So each nation has a number of commodities that they produce. They produce commodities which are worthless to them.
Okay.
But when you trade a commodity to someone else, it becomes a trade good for them.
Yes.
So if you've got 6, like Hakan gets 6 commodities, which is a lot. Most other races seem to get 2 or 3. Some get 4. So they can go, here, I'll give you 2 commodities. You give me 1 of yours. 2 for 1 trade good kind of thing. Or you can get, if you can get 2 for 2.
That doesn't sound like a good deal for Hakan, though. They're giving away.
They've got 6. They got a lot to spare. You know what I mean? They can just splash them around, and it makes good deals because people don't want to.
Do you trade more than just the trade good?
You can trade promissory notes at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of other little nuanced rules. It's pretty simple. It's nothing too difficult at all. I reckon the game will move faster. It's just that, especially in the first few rounds, when Mercantile Rex gets taken and you have that political agenda phase at the end of every turn. That's the other good thing. You don't have to, you have to pick you used to have to pick the assembly strategy card.
Yeah.
No one wanted to pick assembly strategy card, but you had to in order to call the assembly and then name the speaker. There's a similar one that means you grab the speaker token, but you get action cards and you get other stuff as well. It's pretty good. I like it. I like the mix and the blend they've got going on it. I reckon it'll be good.
I'm looking forward to playing a new game.
The best thing is, apart from the little nuances about how the little tweaks and balances might work, you don't have to relearn the game at all. It's the same game. It's the same mechanics. It's just the balances of the races are going to be slightly different. Knowing which cards to take, and as I said, what we did notice was that strategy token economy is much more prevalent in this time. I was used to find that I'd have strategy tokens I could throw around if I wanted to.
Yeah.
You don't in this. You're always looking out and you go, I need to spend it on that.
Because everything costs a strategy.
Nearly everything except for the leadership one where you can buy strategy tokens, and they're at 3-1, not 2-1 anymore.
Ooh,
so the economy's a lot tighter on it.
Yeah.
And I think that slows things down a little bit because you're not. because you're having to put more there. You're moving your fleets less.
Yep.
So because you can't afford, like, you just throw them on tactical and you move your fleet around.
Yep.
But no, you really do want to have a couple on the strategy pool as well. Yeah, I can't wait to see how it plays out with a 6-player, like a full 6-player.
Well, we do have a big meetup coming up at the end of the month. I believe we here in Western Australia have a public holiday coming up on the end of the month.
Is it? Damn, it's too far away. It's like 4 weeks still. No, it'll be good. It'll be good. And as I said, if anyone who's played it before, you're not going to be getting lost. You're going to be looking at the new player cards are so much more helpful than the original ones.
They look like it from what I've seen in pictures.
The information is all heads up there with because individual species have slightly different powered ships in some cases.
Yeah.
For the most part, 90% of them are just the same. But like, for example, the Federation of Sol have much better carriers to begin with.
Yeah.
And things like that.
That's a bit more obvious to see.
The technology trees work a little bit differently.
For the races? Or in general?
In general. It's whereas you used to have prerequisite technologies. Now it's just like this technology will require you to have 2 red and 1 yellow.
Oh, okay.
Technology.
That's better.
So you don't have to have a specific technology. You just need
the colours.
Just the colours.
That's really good.
And so the planets that used to give discounts.
Yep.
They don't give discounts. They let you ignore one prerequisite. So if you got a red one, you can buy that. That means you only need to get 1 red and 1 yellow instead of 2 red.
That's brilliant.
It's little streamlined stuff. I think that actually works quite well.
I always found thinking out and plotting your technology paths was rather cumbersome because you always had to keep cross-referencing what were the prerequisites. Very clumsy. I like this idea.
Yeah, it works well. I didn't get to explore that too much because I was playing the Necrovirus, which means I just rob my technologies from people as well. Anyway, so I didn't like the Necrovirus again. But I also didn't get to play it out properly, the Necrovirus. There's nuances to the races which... There's a whole section, especially after that. No one took Mercantile Rex in our game, so we didn't get to play out that whole political agenda side of things. And arguably, I should have taken Mercantile Rex and kicked that off. But
well, I suppose having to have at your disposal 6 influences was a bit tricky.
No, I had it. I could have done it. It was interesting.
But when you give up 6 influence, you're also giving up resources as well.
No, you're not. It's spent differently. So you don't expend... Oh, no, you have to expend them. Yeah, you do expend them there, but you've always got them available for the voting.
Yeah.
So if you've expended them planets during the turn, because when the political agenda status happens after Mercantile Rex gets taken, it's just assumed that you have all the influence from your planets. So,
okay.
So that's pretty good there. You don't have to worry about that. And there's none of those sending emissaries.
Yeah, that was a bit of a nuisance.
I always thought that was
time consuming.
As I said, everything that's come out of it, I think, yeah, great. I didn't didn't like playing with it, or we didn't use it anyway. All the optional bullshit.
Yeah, like the
leaders.
Leaders, yeah.
Never used leaders. The
I didn't mind the idea of them, but the game was complex enough, and
you don't
keep
need
track
it.
of it.
You don't need it. It's just not necessary. Unnecessary fluff, and the whole, the exploration of planets where you could put random stuff. I could see them doing that in an expansion, but even that, who cares?
Yeah,
it would just slow things down in a game that already took 8 hours.
Yeah.
Already took 11 hours sometimes.
Obviously, they've had a lot of feedback that the game needs to be streamlined to sort of be contained to 8 hours.
And to be fair, that was an expansion that did that stuff anyway. Yeah. I mean, this is much like most of the good bits from all the expansions, the core bits that everyone used anyway, rolled into it, tweaked, and then those action cards specifically sort of changed a little bit as well to make things a little more balanced than that.
Yeah.
All in all, 2 thumbs up.
Huh, excellent. All right. Shall we move into the newsies? What we have of them, which isn't much.
The Antifa thing. So,
we're going to swing back to the original news item we were discussing in the douchebag filter.
Yeah, so there's we discussed the Charlottesville issue, I think not last week but the week before.
Mm-hmm.
So Charlottesville was where
the alt-right came to meet to protest,
and the white nationalists went out there, and some
General Lee. statue.
Yeah, the Jim Lee statue, and there was some opposing protesters, a lot of Antifa involved, and Antifa came out of that looking pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
But now, 2 weeks later, different story. They're looking to. There's been a lot of movement to get them classed as a terrorist organization. Isn't and this is astounding, right? The Antifa, it's in their name, anti-fascist, right? Before any of these white nationalist groups, the KKK or anyone like that, get named as a terrorist organization, Antifa is the one that's getting pushed. And I was listening to another podcast where they were talking about it, and they came up with an interesting thing, because after Charlottesville, there was also Boston, where there was a white nationalist free speech, sorry, I'm saying this in air quotes, but free speech, aka white nationalist march, was going to happen there. And something like 20 people turned up because there was a few thousand anti-fascists or opposing protesters, some of which would have been Antifa, turned up. And this is somewhat saying, I mean, Antifa and that they were grabbing that and saying, yeah, a lot of people didn't turn up on this rally because they knew that we were going to be there, and some people pointed out is it only took a few victories for suddenly even the people on the left, the nominal left, the centrists, Democrats, go, I don't know, this Antifa, they all seem a bit fucking dangerous, because the resistance seems to be losing their monopoly on control of the narrative over there. And Antifa seem to be getting some positive press and actually getting arguably some results. Like, who's to say whether Antifa was directly responsible for these white nationalist groups deciding not to march? There's probably a good chance that some of them were. Some of them did decide not to go.
They're a part of the puzzle. I mean, there were a lot of other people there protesting that they didn't want these types marching through their towns.
Absolutely. But the fact that Antifa is getting labelled, they want to label that as a dangerous. Berkeley wants to classify them as a gang, which lets them use certain extrajudicious sort of processes on them, because there's been a few riots or altercations in Berkeley, and then Nancy Pelosi, one of the lines of the Democrats saying that they're incredibly dangerous. Antifa is incredibly dangerous and needs to be, and is taking things too far.
But not everyone in Antifa. I don't know a lot about Antifa.
Well, it's not a homogenous group.
No, exactly. There are elements of Antifa that abhor violence and believe in non-violent protests. There's a few dickheads in there that really do get rocks off on probably like any group,
probably lining up against a few fascists and knocking some heads together. I can't entirely fault them for this either. I mean, but their ideology isn't actually the hatred, except for maybe of fascists, but they're a reaction to another movement that's out there. Yes. They're not the source of this altercation. So the fact that they're getting possibly blackballed, I don't know. It's quite chilling anyway. It's and the fact that the media can turn the narrative against them so easily while ignoring the white nationalists on the other side, and not going, "Hey, why haven't we classified the KKK as a terrorist organization maybe 50 years ago?" I just don't know how that happens. It seems it's anathema to me.
Well, it's also that weird comparison. It's not it's apples and oranges. You have one group, the alt-right, who are basically, sympathising with white extremist and neo-Nazi philosophies, and basically they don't like people who have no control over their existence.
Yeah.
Whereas on the other side, you have people opposing the alt-right, neo-Nazis, white extremists, who have perfect control over who they choose to like or not like. It's not about their skin colour. They just have a preference to not like certain groups of people. But those groups of people that they don't like have no choice of their existence. They exist.
Yeah. I remember someone was pointing out.
Trying to say there's an equitable comparison between the two is ridiculous.
Yeah. Someone was sort of saying something along the lines of you've got to disavow the Antifa as much as say, because within the white nationalist group marches, there's some good people there. They just want freedom of speech. They happen to be marching with white nationalists, and it's like, well, if they're not going to call out those white nationalists in that group, then fuck them. And they said, well, you should call out Antifa. I said, well, I don't disagree with Antifa, so I got no problem marching alongside them. But if these other people, and a lot of them got scared off from marching with these white nationalist group, because who really wants to be associated with them? These borderline alt-right people all started running in the other direction once they realised everyone was pointing out just how fucking racist the people they were marching with were. You had your baked Alaskas and your Mike Cernoviches that was suddenly, no, we got nothing to do with those guys, and then they were backpedaling as fast as they could.
You're free to have your free speech, and the rest of the community is free to show they're not impressed by it.
That's right. And if Antifa were doing some uncalled for violence or something, I'd fucking denounce that. But I'm not going to denounce Antifa on the whole. No. They're there for a reason, and they've been doing it for a long time.
Now, I know at this point Dean would be advocating that we need to understand where they're coming from, but
no, it's okay. We can understand where you're coming from.
And then we in turn can show we don't care.
Yeah. That's
We're not impressed.
If you're going to march with Nazis, don't complain that you might get punched.
Yes.
Right? If you're going to march with no Nazis.
Yeah. And if you're going to march with Nazis, expect the rest of society to condemn you.
Yeah, it's right. It's like, you can condemn me for marching with Antifa. I don't mind about that. Yeah. But if you're worried and you're complaining about being condemned for marching for white nationalists, that's your fucking problem.
Yeah, it seems like they want it both ways. They want to, have their free speech, and they want the rest of the society to appreciate their free speech. Yeah. It's like, well, no.
A bit of local flavour. I mean, all the Charlottesville issue kicked off with all around the taking down of a particular statue. There's been a little bit of that discussion here in Australia as well. There's a few statues of Governor Macquarie, he who initiated a fairly extensive genocide on local Indigenous populations. And some people saying maybe this guy doesn't need a statue in prominent places. And I don't know, Bill Shorten actually came down, and same with James Cook, who claimed to have discovered and claimed Australia for England. And people were saying, well, there were people here already, maybe we don't need to do that. Bill Shorten had an interesting view where he came out and said, look, I'm quite happy to stick an extra plaque on each of these statues detailing exactly what was said in those things. Yep. Maybe that's one option.
To be honest, I don't have a problem with a revisiting of the existing statues to go, perhaps this is factually incorrect. We need to replace the plaque and put a new one on.
And perhaps a genocidal governor doesn't get a statue in such primacy of place. Let's put that in a museum. But Turnbull came out with a statement saying, we're looking to revise and erase certain histories. Getting rid of statues in that is not erasing history.
No, well, in fact, to some extent, having that statue commemorating such an individual, in itself whitewashes history.
That's exactly right, by ignoring the fact of what he actually did to achieve that position, yeah.
And I know I've had various discussions with Dean about one of the positions he said is that sort of these statues, mark aspects of history. Now, I would still contend that in a lot of these cases, the history's not going to be wiped out by the removal of these statues. There's still...
We're not learning our history by visiting statues.
No.
Yeah.
And my argument where I feel is that statues seem to convey a certain respectability to the individuals about their deeds were legitimate or...
And as you said, in some cases, very much whitewashes that history, like Macquarie's in particular, where it doesn't mention anything about the genocide. So... It's all very well for us white people to say, well, Macquarie, he's part of our heritage. It's like the Aboriginals and the Indigenous people go, his part in our heritage is very differently than what's being portrayed on that statue.
And the other thing that I pointed out in last week's discussion is when you had if you did a comparison to some of the statues and monuments throughout history, someone said, oh, we should pull down the pyramids because they were built by, via slavery. But, with that part of history, we only have a certain amount of connection in terms of the actual history. Whereas if you're talking about the Civil War, it's well documented in books. By tearing out a statue that was, made in the 60s,
that's right.
We don't lose that aspect of history because it's well documented in history. Yeah, and the statue itself has nothing to do with the history of the Civil War per se.
Pulling down Macquarie's statue will not erase him from our history books in the slightest way.
No.
Yeah. That was about all I had regarding the Antifa side of things. I've started doing a bit of a possibly for a future segment. Because I'm getting it out. My favorite podcast at the moment is Chapo Trap House. I like it a lot, and they do a reading section.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah.
I listened to
And
one where they read some right-wing conservative had written a book, an adventure book. I can't remember who it was, but it was hilarious.
I can't remember the name of the guy, but it was funny as well. So I am now trolling through Australian right-wing commenters. People, Andrew Bolt's been done to death, and he gets done quite well by well, may we say, and those guys, because they really do follow him. So I'm trying to find some niche Mike Cernovich style kind of people in the Australian.
Corbinati?
Well, he's a bit too high profile.
Right.
I'm thinking like Blair Cottrell or someone like that who was the head of, it wasn't Reclaim Australia, it was that other right wing Australian group. But I'm trying to find some of them. So I've found a couple of guys, but their writing so far hasn't been amusing enough. Like it's got to. I mean, it's pretty terrible, but you want it to be amusing in some way. So that possibly for a future section anyway. But that's about all I've got.
That's all I've got for today's show.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, from having too many wines today, has led me to be poorly prepared.
Totally.
All right. Thank you for listening. I've been Franco.
I've been Jason.